My name is Anna Morgan Caldwell. I'm 34 years old and the founder of Elite Affairs, Boston's most sought-after event planning company, known for creating experiences so flawless, they seem effortless. 5 years ago, I married into the Caldwell family, one of Boston's oldest and wealthiest lineages. I thought I had secured my place among them with hard work and quiet grace. But at my mother-in-law's birthday dinner in Rome, they showed me exactly what they thought of me. That night, as I stood before a table missing my chair, I realized something far deeper was missing too, their respect, and it was time to take back mine. I remember the first time I met Eleanor Caldwell. Her gaze swept over me like a jeweler inspecting a flawed diamond. I wore a navy sheath dress, my hair in a smooth chignon makeup, flawless after a 14-hour event shift. But to her, I was invisible, an accessory, an efficient tool to orchestrate her galas and fundraisers, not someone worthy of her son's last name. Sean didn't notice the sting in her voice when she said, "Self-made success is so American, isn't it?" He only smiled at me across the table, as if his approval alone could shelter me from his mother's scorn. I let myself believe it. I let myself believe him. Years passed. My career soared while my dignity slowly eroded under their subtle cruelties, her dismissive comments about my menus, my designs, my accent that betrayed my small-town New Hampshire roots. The way Sean never contradicted her, only squeezed my thigh under the table in silent apology, as if silent apologies were love. I tried to earn my place. I curated their celebrations, salvaged their failed investments with strategic charity galas to boost their public image, and made Eleanor look like a queen in every society column. Yet every room I entered as Anna the planner, not Anna the Caldwell. And that night in Rome, standing before a table where my chair should have been, I felt centuries of their quiet disdain crystallize into a single truth. I was never meant to belong here. I wasn't missing from that table by accident. I was missing by design. My heart thudded in my chest, each beat echoing a memory our wedding night where Eleanor toasted to Anna, who will surely bring practicality to our family, traditions the baby shower she hosted for Melissa, while pointedly reminding me month after month that I remained childless. The boardroom meetings where Sean introduced me as his wife, who also does events. Something inside me broke that night. But it wasn't the part they wanted to break. They wanted to bend me into silent compliance, to make me leave quietly stripped of dignity and leverage. Instead, what broke was the last thread tethering me to the illusion that their acceptance mattered. And in that severing, a dark calm washed over me. My humiliation burned away, revealing something stronger beneath the ashes. I turned, heels clicking against the marble floor, each step echoing the vow forming in my chest. If they wanted a spectacle, I would give them one. I spent the rest of that night staring at the city lights of Rome from my hotel terrace. The Colosseum glowed under floodlights in the distance, ancient and immovable, its stones soaked with centuries of blood and betrayal. I wondered if any woman had ever stood in its shadows feeling exactly as I did now, expendable, humiliated, forced to play her final act under the eyes of those who deemed her unworthy. Inside the suite, Sean slept peacefully, unaware of the storm unraveling inside me. His chest rose and fell with practiced calm, the same calm he wore when his mother insulted me at dinner parties, when his sister laughed at my rustic New Hampshire accent, when I begged him to stand up for me, and he only kissed my forehead with that tired, pitying affection. I watched him breathe and felt nothing. No love, no hate, just emptiness. A deep, echoing silence where my heart used to be. Earlier that day, while he was at breakfast with his brother, I found the draft divorce papers, tucked in his briefcase between financial statements, showing offshore accounts and liquidation instructions. Each page was dated 2 months earlier, each clause a surgical cut to extract me from their dynasty with minimum fuss and minimum settlement. Most damning was the script, an actual script detailing how he would announce our amicable separation at Eleanor's birthday dinner. They had timed my disposal as carefully as I timed the placement of flowers at their events. 5 years of marriage reduced to a 6-sentence eulogy to preserve their social standing. My fingers had trembled as I photographed every page, but in my chest, a strange calm spread, a dead calm, the kind sailors feel when the ocean goes flat and silent before swallowing their ship whole. That night after the missing chair after the oops, guess we miscounted laughter, after I walked out with my dignity burning like a dying star in my chest, I lay awake making plans. For years I had built my career on contingency strategies, disaster protocols, backup vendors, emergency cancellations, no bride left sobbing without flowers, no gala ruined by a missed delivery. I knew how to salvage events collapsing under chaos. Now I realized I was the collapsing event, and I was done salvaging. I wanted it to burn. At dawn, I showered, dried my hair with precise movements, and dressed in a black silk blouse tucked into high-waisted slate trousers. I lined my eyes in charcoal and painted my lips a deep, unforgiving red. War paint. My reflection looked back at me. Tired eyes, set jaw, a woman reborn from the ashes of her own naivete. In the lobby, I sipped espresso as Eleanor floated past in her Chanel suit, trailed by staff carrying her shopping bags. She gave me a cool nod, the kind you give a silent servant. I held her gaze until her eyes flicked away. Sean appeared minutes later, rumpled from sleep, scrolling through his phone. His wedding ring flashed under the marble chandeliers. For a moment, I saw him as he was the day we met, confident, charming, his eyes crinkling when he smiled at my event designs. For a moment, I felt the old ache of love. Then I remembered the text from Vanessa. "Can't wait to see you in Rome. Have you told her yet?" And the ache turned to steel. We spent the morning touring the Borghese Gallery. Eleanor's delighted commentary filled every marble hall, her voice echoing off Caravaggio's chiaroscuro masterpieces. Sean walked beside her answering questions about upcoming investments, never once glancing at me. To them I was invisible, just as they wanted. But invisibility is power if wielded right. Ghosts hear everything. I listened to Eleanor telling Melissa about the dinner that night. "Vanessa arrives tomorrow," she said, lips curling into a satisfied smile. "We'll finally be rid of this provincial girl." My pulse thudded in my throat, but I kept my face serene. Vanessa. Pregnant Vanessa. The woman they'd always wanted for Sean. The baby sealing an alliance older than my presence in their lives. That evening back at the hotel I began. I called Marco at a Roma restaurant, confirming final details with polite precision. My voice never wavered. Then I checked my business banking app. The deposits for every vendor sat under my company's credit line. Every signature bore my name. Every contract included cancellation clauses I had inserted as standard policy. They thought they owned the event. They forgot who owned the infrastructure. By the time I slipped into my midnight blue Valentino gown hair, pinned in a sleek chignon, I felt no fear, only a quiet humming certainty. Like standing at the edge of a cliff, toes over the abyss, knowing you will jump, and you will not fall. You will fly. In the lobby, the family gathered. Sean's eyes lingered on me for a heartbeat, taking in the gown's sharp elegance, the way it clung to my waist, before falling like liquid shadow to the floor. "You look beautiful," he said autumn-attically, the way you admire a painting in a gallery before moving on. Thank you. I replied, my voice soft as a blade drawn in moonlight. Eleanor air-kissed my cheek. Do try to behave tonight, Anna. We wouldn't want unpleasantness. I smiled. Don't worry. Tonight will be unforgettable. And as the elevator doors closed around us, carrying us up toward the rooftop restaurant, I felt my pulse steady to a single silent vow. They wanted a story where I left in shame. Instead, I would write an ending that made the world remember my name. The elevator doors slid open, revealing the rooftop restaurant bathed in golden candlelight. Aroma's terrace stretched out before us, each table dressed in crisp white linen and crowned with flickering votives. Beyond the glass railing, the Colosseum rose in silent grandeur against the Roman night, a monument to both human brilliance and savage cruelty. How fitting, I thought, that tonight's dinner played out beneath its watchful gaze. Eleanor walked ahead, her diamond necklace catching the light with each regal step. Richard followed, adjusting his cufflinks as if preparing to host foreign dignitaries rather than celebrate his wife's birthday. Melissa and Thomas trailed behind, whispering inside jokes, ignoring the woman who orchestrated every moment of this evening. And then there was Sean, my husband, the man who once pressed his forehead to mine in the darkness of our bedroom and whispered, "I'll always protect you," the man who had scripted my public execution tonight. As we approached the table, my heart beat in slow, heavy thuds. 12 chairs gleamed around it, each place setting marked with elegant calligraphy. White peonies spilled from silver vases, their fragrance curling softly into the night air. But there was no chair for me. I stood frozen for half a breath, watching as the family slid seamlessly into their seats, ignoring the absence they had designed. Marco the maître d' glanced at me with discomfort, aware something was wrong, but bound by hospitality's silent chains. Eleanor's eyes met mine across the table. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Is something wrong, dear?" she asked, voice smooth as oiled silk. "There seems to be a mistake," I said calmly, though my pulse pounded so hard I thought it might bruise the inside of my chest. "My place setting is missing." A hush fell. The candle flames flickered in the sudden stillness. Melissa made a show of looking around the table. "Oh, how odd," she murmured, feigning confusion. "Did someone count wrong?" Then came Sean's line, the one he had practiced, the one that would seal my fate in front of them all. He chuckled lightly, running a hand through his hair with affected embarrassment. "Oops, guess we miscounted." The table erupted in polite laughter, the kind that slices rather than soothes. I felt their glee ripple through the air like static before a storm. They wanted a scene. They wanted my tears, my raised voice, my shattered dignity. But I gave them nothing. Instead, I let silence settle around me like a cloak. I turned my gaze from one face to another. Eleanor's triumphant smirk, Richard's discomfort, Melissa's cruel delight, Sean's detached calculation. And I felt something inside me click into place, like the final piece of a lock sliding open. "Seems I'm not family," I said quietly. The words fell heavy and sharp, like a blade dropped onto marble. Their smiles faltered. For the first time all evening, I saw uncertainty in Sean's eyes. "I'll see myself out," I added, turning away before anyone could reply. I walked through the restaurant, head high, feeling their eyes burn into my back. Waitstaff parted before me in silent sympathy. As the elevator doors closed, sealing their world away from mine, I felt my hands begin to tremble. But it wasn't fear. It was rage and relief braided together into something almost holy. Downstairs, the cool Roman air hit my skin, clearing the last of the candle smoke from my lungs. I crossed the street to a small cafe, ordered a doppio espresso, and opened my phone. In the glow of its screen, I became what I had always been, the architect of events, the quiet force turning gears behind spectacle. I opened my event management app, fingers steady as steel. I canceled the dinner payment first, instructing Marco to bill Eleanor directly. Then the yacht excursion, the private Vatican tour, the villa in Tuscany, the Amalfi driver. One by one, I pulled the threads holding their week together. With each cancellation, my chest felt lighter, my shoulders uncurled. My heart began to beat in a rhythm I hadn't felt in years my own. 30 minutes later, espresso finished, I crossed back to Aroma. Marco met me by the service entrance, confusion etched on his lined face. "Signora Caldwell, is this wise?" he asked softly in Italian. "Perfect," I replied. "Exactly as planned." He nodded, understanding blooming in his dark eyes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. From my vantage near the kitchen, I watched as he approached the table. Eleanor's smile faded, first replaced by a tight line. Richard leaned in, voice rising in urgent whispers. Melissa's face flushed red with embarrassment. And Sean sat motionless, eyes fixed on the empty chair where I should have been. My phone buzzed in my clutch. "Sean, Anna, where are you? Stop this. Come back. We can fix it." Another message. "Sean, please. Mother is upset. You're embarrassing yourself." I silenced the notifications, turned off the screen, and tucked the phone away. I stepped out from the shadows, walking towards their table with calm, deliberate grace. 12 pairs of eyes lifted to meet mine. Rage, fear, disbelief, an exquisite tableau. Eleanor's voice trembled with fury. "How dare you ruin my birthday?" I smiled, feeling the weight of 5 years lift from my bones. I learned from the best, Eleanor. Isn't public humiliation your speciality? Sean stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. His eyes were wild, uncomprehending. "What have you done?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. No pain, no regret, only freedom. "I reclaimed my place," I said softly, "by leaving yours behind." And with that, I turned away. The candles flickered in the evening breeze, catching the deep blue of my gown, illuminating the woman they could no longer control. I walked through the terrace doors, down the marble stairs, and into the Roman night. For the first time in years, I felt truly, irrevocably, untouchably free. I left Rome before dawn. As the plane ascended through lilac clouds, the city's golden domes receded into darkness, and I felt every mile carry me closer to myself, closer to the woman I had buried under designer gowns and polite smiles, closer to the girl who once waited tables to pay for her business degree. Her fingers cracked and raw from polishing silverware, her heart stubborn with dreams no one else believed in. When I landed in Boston, the city greeted me with steel gray skies and cold spring rain. I inhaled the damp air deeply, letting its chill anchor me. The Beacon Hill brownstone I had shared with Sean loomed silent as I stepped inside. Its rooms echoed with curated perfection. Fresh flowers delivered weekly curated art lining the walls, antique rugs that muffled every step and every scream. I called the movers that afternoon. I took only what was mine. My clothes, my books, my grandmother's silver locket. The rest, the monogrammed towels, the baccarat crystal, the designer cookware used twice a year, belonged to the Caldwell performance. I wanted nothing from their stage. As the movers packed, I sat by the bay window in my study, looking out at the brick-lined street below. I thought about Vanessa, about the baby she carried that would cement her place at Eleanor's table. I thought about Sean sitting at his mother's dinner, watching his empire crumble course by course. And for the first time in months, I felt calm. I moved into a loft downtown. Exposed beams, brick walls, wide windows that flooded the room with dawn light. It smelled of possibility, fresh paint, new wood floors, paper from unopened boxes of books. At night, I lay awake listening to the city hum outside taxis, honking sirens, wailing voices drifting up from sidewalks. Life happening. Unpolished, unscripted, real. Elite affairs thrived despite the scandal. Or perhaps because of it. Stories circulated, of course. Of the Caldwell event planner who walked out. Of the woman who dismantled an empire with a few taps on her phone. But clients who mattered respected discretion over gossip. They admired quiet vengeance. They saw in me what Eleanor never did, not a pretty ornament, but a strategist, a force. My first client after Rome was a tech CEO launching a new AI platform. As I stood in the center of a raw industrial space, directing lighting rigs and floral installations, she pulled me aside. "I read what happened in Italy," she said quietly. "Good for you. Women like us, we build our own kingdoms." I smiled, feeling something bloom inside my chest. Yes, kingdoms. Built not on borrowed surnames, but on unbreakable selves. Months passed. Seasons shifted. Spring rain gave way to Boston's humid summers, then to the brittle gold of autumn. My lawyer finalized the divorce swiftly. Sean signed the papers without contest, perhaps because he knew I held the proof of his offshore accounts of his deliberate fraud. Perhaps because Eleanor told him to. Vanessa gave birth to a daughter. Their engagement made page 6 for a day before fading under the next scandal. I felt no jealousy, only pity. She had inherited my chair at that table, unaware it was never truly hers to keep. On the anniversary of that dinner in Rome, I flew back to Italy. This time for me. I spent mornings drinking espresso on sunlit balconies, afternoons swimming in the turquoise coves of Capri nights, wandering narrow stone streets perfumed with lemons and sea salt. One evening I stood alone on a terrace overlooking Positano. The town glittered down the cliffside like spilled gold waves lapping far below. I closed my eyes and breathed in the brine and rosemary-scented wind. I thought about who I had been, the young planner desperate to belong, the wife who folded her edges to fit their mold, the woman humiliated before a table of false royals. And I thought about who I had become, a strategist who dismantled betrayal with surgical precision, a founder whose empire was her own, a woman no longer waiting for a chair at someone else's table. I raised my glass of limoncello to the horizon, the sea swallowing the last flame of sun. To rebirth, to rebranding, to resurrection, to never again asking for permission to exist. And as the first stars pricked open the navy sky, I whispered to the darkness. They tried to make me small, but in losing their world, I discovered the universe within myself. Back in Boston, life settled into a quiet rhythm I had almost forgotten was possible. Mornings began with the sharp aroma of dark roast brewing in my small but sunlit kitchen. No staff preparing elaborate breakfasts I never asked for. No Eleanor dictating the day's schedule from the other end of the dining table. Just me, the city waking below, and my thoughts uncoiling like silk ribbons in the dawn. At the office, my team moved around me with calm efficiency. They didn't see me as an extension of someone else's legacy. To them, I was the architect, the strategist, who turned chaos into beauty. I nurtured this perception with intention. No more trying to soften my edges to seem likable. No more apologizing for high standards. Strength, I realized, is not something you announce. It is something you embody so fully that others feel it in the silence between your words. One Wednesday afternoon, while finalizing a venue design for a Fortune 500 gala, my phone buzzed with a Boston Globe alert. Caldwell Investment Group files for restructuring. The article outlined failed acquisitions, investor lawsuits, and an impending SEC inquiry. I stared at the headline, waiting for a wave of vindication to crash through me. But nothing came. No thrill, no gloating, just stillness, like watching the tide pull back, to reveal the ocean floor, silent, inevitable, and indifferent to human pride. That evening I walked along the Charles River esplanade, cold wind lifting the hair from my shoulders. Lights glittered across the dark water. Joggers passed me in bright vests. Dogs trotted beside owners clutching steaming cups of cider. Life moved forward oblivious to broken empires. I paused on a wooden footbridge leaning against the railing as the city pulsed beyond. For years I believed power was proximity to wealth, to influence, to a name that commanded rooms. But standing there listening to the quiet slap of water against stone, I understood power is not proximity. It is sovereignty, the unbreakable knowing that you own yourself, your mind, your time, your story. A week later, Vanessa called me. Her voice trembled through the speaker. I don't know who else to call. He's different now. Angry, controlling. I thought once you were gone, things would be easier. I closed my eyes, letting the echo of her words settle around me like falling ash. I could almost see her curled in one of Eleanor's gilt chairs, one hand resting on her pregnant belly, realizing too late that she was never the queen of that kingdom, only its newest pawn. Anna, she whispered, I'm sorry for everything. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Her apology was not for me. It was for herself, a desperate absolution, and I would not be the priest to grant it. That night, lying in my linen sheets window cracked open to let in the scent of October leaves, I thought about forgiveness. People imagine it is a single act, a spoken phrase that unchains the heart. But forgiveness is not about words. It is about freedom, about walking so far beyond the ruins that their shadows no longer touch you. I did not forgive Sean. I did not forgive Eleanor. I simply released them. Their story was no longer mine to carry. The next morning I rose before dawn and drove to the North End. As the sky turned coral behind the skyline, I sat at a cafe window sipping espresso and writing notes for my upcoming TEDx talk. Topic: the power of walking away. How liberation begins with one missing chair. I thought about the women who would sit in that audience. Some trapped in boardrooms that belittled them. Some trapped in marriages that erased them. Some trapped in silent agreements to remain small. I would stand before them and say, they tried to make me forget who I was, but in the end they reminded me. Because a missing chair at someone else's table is not a loss. It's an invitation to build your own. And as I wrote those words, a fierce warmth bloomed in my chest. It was not revenge. It was not triumph. It was rebirth. I stepped back into the restaurant just as Marco approached their table, flanked by two senior staff in crisp black uniforms. The warm glow of candlelight flickered against the polished glass walls, illuminating the scene like a painting suspended in time. Eleanor's laughter cut off mid-sentence, the crystalline sound shattering into silence. Sean glanced up, confusion flickering across his features as he saw me standing in the shadows near the bar. His eyes searched my face, desperate for answers he was far too late to seek. Marco leaned forward, his voice calm but resolute, carrying just enough volume to draw the attention of nearby diners. I apologize, Mrs. Caldwell, but the payment method on file has been reversed. We will need an alternative form before continuing service. For a long, trembling moment, there was only silence. The flames on the table candles quivered in the breeze, sweeping in from the terrace. Richard began to splutter his face, turning a mottled shade of crimson as he scrabbled inside his blazer for his platinum card. Eleanor sat rigid, her spine as steel-rod lips pressed into a thin, furious line. Melissa looked from her father to her mother, her mascara-smudged eyes widening in panic, as if realizing for the first time in her cosseted life that power could slip away. Sean rose abruptly, his chair screeching against the stone floor as it toppled backward. The sharp sound sliced through the murmurs of the dining room. He pulled out his phone, thumbs flying across the screen, in a flurry of frantic movements. Seconds later, mine buzzed in my clutch. I opened it with deliberate slowness. "Sean, Anna, what the hell are you doing? Come back. Fix this. Please." Another message followed within seconds. "Sean, don't do this here. Come back to the table. We can talk." And then the final one. "Sean, please, come back. We can sort this out. Don't do this to us." I read each message, letting his desperation seep into me like poison I no longer feared. Then, lifting my eyes to meet his across the restaurant, I pressed call. He answered on the first ring, his voice trembling with forced calm that barely concealed the panic beneath. "Anna," he said softly, like he was trying to soothe a wild animal. "Listen to me. This is childish. Come back to the table, we'll talk privately. You don't have to make a scene." I let silence coil between us, taut as a drawn bowstring. The air around me seemed to thrum with the power I held in that moment. Finally, I spoke, my voice smooth and cold as the marble under my heels. "Seems I'm not family, Sean." He exhaled sharply, the sound slicing into the quiet like a knife. "Don't be dramatic. Of course you're family. We just miscounted." I almost laughed at the pathetic echo of his earlier words, but it came out as something darker, a humorless smile that curled my lips with disdain. My voice stayed level, each syllable coated in frost. "No, I'm not family, and from this moment on, I have no responsibility for yours." Silence crackled between us louder than any scream. Across the terrace, I watched his shoulders slump as the weight of my words and their consequences sank into his bones. His jaw worked soundlessly as he tried to form an argument strong enough to tether me back to them, but there was nothing left for him to hold on to. I ended the call without another word. The screen went black in my hand, mirroring the void that yawned open between us. Around their table, diners whispered behind manicured hands, their gazes darting from the pale, trembling Caldwell dynasty to me standing alone in my midnight blue dress that shimmered like the edge of a blade. Then I turned away, my heels clicking against the marble, each step carrying me further from the empire that never saw me as more than an accessory to their fortune. The evening air was crisp against my skin. As I exited onto the street, the distant hum of traffic greeting me like an anthem of freedom. Behind me, their humiliation bloomed in the candlelit shadows, a spectacle for the society pages tomorrow. But mine had already burned away, leaving nothing but steel where my heart used to ache. And as the automatic doors slid shut behind me, I realized with a quiet, bone-deep certainty I was done being someone's afterthought. From now on, I would be my own empire. As I stepped out into the cold Roman night, the murmurs from the restaurant faded behind me, swallowed by the vast, echoing hush of the sleeping city. My heels clicked against the marble steps, each strike reverberating like a war drum through the quiet street, announcing my exit to no one but myself. Above me, the sky stretched ink-black and bottomless, the stars hidden behind drifting banks of silver-gray clouds. I felt the damp air kiss my bare shoulders, raising goosebumps along my arms, and let its chill anchor me back into my body, a body that finally felt like mine again. For the first time in years, I felt weightless, untethered, alive. My phone buzzed again in my clutch, the vibration sharp and insistent against my hip. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I let it ring out the silent rejection sweeter than any victory I had ever tasted. When I finally glanced down, the message glowed up at me like a last dying plea. "Sean, Anna, please, don't leave like this. We can fix it. Mother is upset. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself." A laugh bubbled up in my throat, sharp and bitter, and edged with years of unshed rage. Embarrassing myself. as if that was the worst sin a Caldwell woman could commit. I had spent 5 years twisting myself into silent, invisible shapes to avoid embarrassing them. 5 years swallowing my pride and sanding down my edges so Eleanor could shine brighter, so Melissa could remain untouchable, so Sean could keep his perfect life unmarred by inconvenient truths. 5 years of calculated silence, polite nods, and smiling acquiescence. Not tonight. Tonight their empire cracked under the weight of my quiet rebellion. I turned off my phone completely and slipped it into my clutch. Across the street, the little cafe where I had orchestrated their downfall still glowed with warm amber lamplight, beckoning me with its quiet promise of solitude. I walked back in heels, silent on the worn tile floor, and ordered another espresso. The barista recognized me from earlier, his dark eyes widening slightly in surprise, but saying nothing as he prepared the drink. I carried the tiny white cup to a table by the window and sat down facing the restaurant across the street. Outside, the Caldwell family scrambled in a tableau of disarray and humiliation. Sean paced just beyond the terrace doors, phone pressed to his ear, his shoulders hunched against a chill he couldn't control. Eleanor was speaking rapidly to Marco, her perfectly manicured hands slicing through the air with imperious fury, her face twisted into a mask of indignation and disbelief. Melissa sat crumpled in her chair, dabbing at her mascara-streaked cheeks with a linen napkin, her wide eyes darting around as if searching for a reality where this wasn't happening. Richard sat slumped motionless, his thick fingers curled into fists on the tablecloth, his face an ashen mask of silent rage. I watched them with a stillness I hadn't felt in years. For so long, I had been the quiet woman behind every successful Caldwell gala, every headline-making charity dinner, every pristine family photograph splashed across society pages, the invisible hand-stitching perfection into their public image, smoothing every wrinkle, mending every hidden tear. Tonight they learned what happened when that hand pulled every thread loose. The waiter set my espresso down with a soft clink of porcelain against wood. He paused, glancing over his shoulder at the commotion across the street, before looking back at me, curiosity flickering in his dark eyes. "Everything okay, Signora?" He asked, his English wrapped in the gentle cadence of Italian courtesy. I looked up at him, feeling something deep within me settle into place with unshakable finality. A soft smile curved my lips, small and private, and laced with a peace I hadn't known in years. "Everything is exactly as it should be," I said. He nodded, sensing this was a conversation he need not enter, and walked away, leaving me alone with the quiet strength blooming in my chest. I wrapped both hands around the tiny cup, feeling its warmth seep into my chilled fingers, grounding me in this singular moment of triumph. In the darkened reflection of the cafe window, I saw myself clearly for the first time in years, my dark eyes steady and unflinching, my mouth set in calm determination, my shoulders pulled back despite the weight I had carried for so long. They thought they had broken me tonight, but all they did was set me free. And as I sipped the bitter, fragrant espresso savoring its bite on my tongue, I let a single thought unfurl and take root in the quiet soil of my mind. This is only the beginning. I woke before dawn the next morning. The sky beyond my hotel window was still draped in shadows, Rome sleeping under a hush of clouded silence. For a moment I lay there staring at the ornate carved ceiling, the remnants of dreams dissolving in the dim light. I felt the familiar ache in my chest, the same dull gnawing ache that had woken me for years in the Caldwell house, whispering reminders that I didn't belong, that my presence was conditional. My worth weighed against their pride. Except today it felt different. It wasn't pain anymore. It was space. An open, cavernous space where pain used to be. Space that felt infinite, limitless, as though something within me had been excavated and cleared out, leaving behind only raw possibility. I rose and moved quietly around the suite, folding my clothes into my suitcase with calm precision. The Valentino gown still hung over the back of the velvet chair where I'd draped it the night before. Its midnight blue folds rippled like water under the dim lamp glow, the silk catching faint hints of silver. I ran my hand across it one last time, feeling the cool fabric slide beneath my fingertips, then folded it carefully between layers of white tissue paper. At the mirror, I tied my hair into a low knot at the nape of my neck. No makeup, no armor, just my own bare face staring back at me, cheeks still flushed from sleep, dark eyes lined with exhaustion, and something sharper than anger, peace. A peace that had cost me everything I thought I wanted, but returned to me everything I truly needed. Downstairs, the lobby was empty, filled only with the quiet hum of early morning air vents and the muted footsteps of a lone cleaner, polishing the marble floors to a silent sheen. The concierge at the front desk nodded at me as I passed a flicker of curiosity in his eyes that he politely swallowed behind professional composure. Outside the city, air bit cold against my skin, bracing and clean-smelling faintly of rain and earth. A black town car waited at the curb. The driver stepped forward to take my luggage without a word, his breath clouding in the chilled dawn. I slid into the back seat, sinking into the buttery leather, with a quiet exhale, not bothering to look back at the hotel, receding behind me. As we pulled away from the grand facade, I caught my reflection in the tinted glass of the window. For the first time in 5 years, I saw a woman untethered from someone else's empire. A woman no longer defined by a man's last name or a family's acceptance. A woman stripped bare of every illusion they had fed her, left only with the indestructible core she'd almost forgotten she possessed. My phone vibrated once, then again. I didn't need to check to know who it was. Each call came like a final gasp from a drowning world I no longer belonged to. I ignored them all. At the airport, I wheeled my suitcase up to the Alitalia counter passport, in hand the glass doors sliding open with a gentle sigh as dawn's first light spilled across the polished floors. The agent smiled as she tapped at her keyboard. "You have enough points for first-class Senora Caldwell," she said brightly. Caldwell. The name sat heavy on my ticket, but not on my spirit. Soon it would be gone, replaced with my own once more, a name unbound by legacy or scandal, carrying only what I chose to build with it. I walked through security, the hum of conveyor belts and soft murmurs of sleepy travelers washing over me. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls, I watched as the first rays of sun broke over the runway, painting the tarmac and planes in liquid rose gold light. The metal wings shimmered in the dawn, like blades forged anew. As I waited to board, I scrolled through the news out of idle curiosity. A single line in the Boston Globe caught my eye. Caldwell Investments faces scrutiny as major clients withdraw funds. I didn't click to read further. Their empire crumbling was no longer my concern. The woman who cared about their approval, their name, their polished illusion of permanence. She died the night they removed her chair and left her standing alone in a room built on betrayal. When the gate agent called my group, I rose, slung my leather tote over my shoulder, and walked down the jet bridge with silent, steady purpose. Each step felt like peeling back old skin, shedding layers that no longer fit. Inside the plane, as I settled into my wide, pale leather seat, the flight attendant offered champagne. I accepted. The chilled glass pressed into my palm, bubbles rising in frantic constellations, before bursting at the surface in tiny bursts of fleeting light. 1 year later, I stood on a sunlit terrace overlooking the endless sweep of the Amalfi Coast. Below, the Mediterranean rippled in shades of sapphire and indigo waves licking the limestone cliffs with patient, eternal devotion. The breeze carried the bright, aching perfume of lemon blossoms, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat and awaken every sense. Far down the cliffs, fishing boats bobbed like silver pins scattered across blue velvet. Behind me in the villa's courtyard, life unfolded with quiet, exquisite precision. Florists moved like dancers, weaving white orchids and olive branches into towering arches. Chefs